Chapter 1. Place, Dreamland, Area 51. Date, April 2026. Peter Roberts had been employed at Area 51 for just over 20 years. He'd been very fortunate because as he was hired, many of the other scientists and technicians in Area 51 had found themselves unemployed. What had saved Roberts and a small team of other experts were his areas of expertise. They were at the cutting edge and just at the beginning of their evolutionary cycles. He was an expert in robotics and more specifically how to link artificial intelligence, or AI, with robotics. When Roberts had joined the project in 2005, robotics were still in their infancy, as was artificial intelligence. Truth be told, Roberts had had a difficult time at UC Berkeley deciding on which of the two areas to specialize in because he was fascinated by both. So, he decided that he'd get a PhD in both areas. Sure, it took him a bit longer, but the work was fascinating in both areas, and he loved it. Just as he'd completed his second PhD at the end of 2004, he was approached one night in the parking lot of the university by a man that he'd not seen or met before. The stranger introduced himself as Colin Waitrose and said that he worked for the U.S. government and asked if Dr. Roberts had time for a coffee. Roberts was skeptical at first at this type of introduction and asked to see some identification, which Waitrose immediately presented. It looked on the up and up. Roberts was intrigued by this line of introduction, and so he'd agreed to walk across the campus to grab a coffee at a Starbucks and to see what the stranger had to say. It was evident from the start that Mr. Waitrose knew a lot about one Peter Roberts. They retrieved their coffees from the counter, and as they sat, Mr. Waitrose started off. "So, Dr. Roberts, we've been watching your career and studies for some time," he started. Roberts interjected. "Could you define who 'we' is, and what 'some time' is, Mr. Waitrose?" Waitrose smiled and said, "Of course. We've been aware of your presence at the university here since you began your studies for your second PhD after having achieved the first in robotics, and then moving on to the second in artificial intelligence. You will have noted from my credentials that I work for the CIA, and every year we cross-reference people that are studying areas of interest to us, and well, Doctor, your achievements in the two areas had you flagged in our system as someone of great interest to us. You see, Doctor, I think we, like you, can see where some of this science is going to lead, and we don't want to be left behind. As such, I represent a branch of the CIA that tries very hard to keep our country in the forefront of research and that will assist us in the defense of our country and defense of our way of life. This making sense to you, Doctor?" Roberts nodded his head in the affirmative and asked, "But what exactly is it that you want from me, given that you already know so much about me?" Waitrose fixed a stare on the doctor and said, "It's simply this. We'd like you to come and work for us. You'd be employed as a scientist at an Air Force base in Las Vegas. You'd be put on projects which combine your two areas of expertise, and as time goes by, and all things being equal, you may have access to building your own teams for research and development in your areas of expertise." Roberts was taken aback. "But you said you work for the CIA, and now you've said that I'd work at an Air Force base." Waitrose responded, "Correct. You see, the CIA works in collaboration with the Air Force to decide where the research dollars should go. We collaborate with other agencies as well. But the Air Force, fortunately, has facilities set up that allow the development of systems in a very private and secret location." "Do you mean Area 51? Roberts asked. Waitrose visibly cringed. "We don't like to talk a lot about that, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention it again, but yes, that's the area I'm referring to." Roberts allowed himself to break into a small smile. Inside, he was turning cartwheels of joy. It was difficult to find research dollars, and here they were being presented to him on a platter without a search. Still, he didn't want to jump blindly into any kind of commitment, and so he availed himself the opportunity to ask Waitrose a few more questions. So, Mr. Waitrose, is it okay if I ask a few more questions before I agree or tentatively agree to anything? Waitrose replied, absolutely. I'm wondering exactly what the science would look like at the beginning and where it's going. Waitrose looked around by glancing over his shoulder to the left and then to the right. The Starbucks was empty, except for the baristas, and they were too far away to hear the conversation. He moved closer to Roberts and said, we'd like you to move both areas of science forward, and while doing so, we'd like you to combine them as they move forward. Our goal is to have a humanoid life form robot that has artificial intelligence incorporated. Roberts countered, but Mr. Waitrose, there are multiple levels of AI, so you'd need to be more specific so that I have an idea of the capabilities and the level of integration. Of course, went on Waitrose. We want the AI that is incorporated in the humanoid artificial intelligence life form, or HAIL, as we've named it, to be self-aware, self-evolving, and learning. It must understand self-determination. That had been the specification that Roberts had been waiting to hear come out of Waitrose's mouth. As he had just said to Waitrose, there were several levels of AI that teams could shoot for. He didn't want to stop at one of the lower level forms that could complete essays for college kids or tell you about lions in Africa when asked. He wanted to develop an artificial intelligence that could learn and possess self-determination and awareness. He wanted a system that could think and envision the vestibule that was housing it, whether that was a computer or a humanoid robotic device of the future. On the robotic side, he didn't want to create a robot with fake-looking skin that could answer a few questions haltingly. He wanted to create a robot that moved like a human being, could balance on two legs, and could have the ability to move around similar to a human being, but also had at its discretion the power to use a drive system and hydraulics to its advantage in certain scenarios. I mean, if one were to play God and design the human body again, why not make it stronger, faster, and more agile? Roberts realized that these were both monumental goals, but it was what he wanted to spend his life trying to do. He still had more questions that were nagging at him, and so he continued. So, Mr. Waitrose, as the project moves forward, surely you and your, he paused, department must understand that whatever team we put together in Dreamland won't advance the science as fast as, say, corporate America or corporate Europe can. I mean, it's ludicrous to believe that we can put together a team in a remote location, no matter how qualified they are, and expect that we will advance the science as fast as corporate America or even corporate Europe can. How do you see us getting around that fact? Or how do you envision us incorporating the latest developments in each of the fields of study? These were great questions, and Waitrose wasn't surprised that he was being hit by them. Doc, let's just say that we have the means by which to ensure that we will have access to the cutting edge in either technology. First, we have teams that are embedded in high-level developmental companies. These sources ensure that we are made aware of advances in whatever fields we're interested in, as well as making us aware they are great sources of actual work that we need to feed to our own scientific community for further examination. At this, Roberts flinched. You're talking about corporate espionage. We like to think about it as corporate monitoring, to make sure that we are moving in the right direction. Roberts was shocked, and the more questions he posed, the more questions he had. He continued, but who decides where to put the assets that you embed to get this information? How does the information get to your scientists? Is this even legal? Doctor, you're getting yourself worked up over things that have long been resolved by our government and our system. These questions of morality have been answered by our organization, and the fact is that it's our duty to keep an eye on corporate America, and in fact, corporate anywhere, to ensure that the technology that is developed does not pose a danger to our country and our way of life. In fact, we also need to ensure that if there is a technology out there that can be weaponized, that our team is at the forefront of the design of such a system and not taken by surprise. So, in answer to your question, we operate assets in many companies and take the information in to ensure that we stay at the cutting edge of development. With regards to your question about how a program with a few people can be expected to keep abreast of developments in each of the areas of interest, I can tell you that we actively recruit personnel into programs that will be beneficial to us. Roberts wasn't yet satisfied and asked, so hypothetically, let's say that Google builds an artificial intelligence model that they want to put on the open market. How would your organization handle this? Waitrose countered, we have assets that are embedded in many of the largest technological companies here in the US and in many other countries. Following the attacks of 9/11, we were given free rein to put assets into these areas to monitor the development of such systems that could eventually be a threat to our country or equally assist in our national defense. To answer your question then, those assets would provide us with insight into the development stream of that project, and would also pass information about how our teams could move their own projects forward. In this way, we'd keep pace with the development of artificial intelligence at Google, but equally, we'd be further ahead because we'd have incoming streams of equal value from companies like Tesla, Facebook, Microsoft, Intel, and IBM. I haven't mentioned all of the sources, but you can see with this kind of information flow, our teams, while developing their own system, using their own resources, have the benefit of the information feeds from the top sources in the world. Now warming to his explanation, Waitrose continued. In addition to providing an information flow, every year we recruit 1 or 2 relevant and cutting-edge experts to the project if we think that it would be beneficial to our needs. You'd have a say in who we thought would be valuable to have on our projects, and then we'd convince them that they should come and work for us on your team. Waitrose paused to see what reaction he was getting from Roberts. Roberts was having trouble digesting all of this. He was now privy to the fact that the CIA was in fact carrying out corporate espionage within America, and then using the information to advance projects in defense of the country. He looked at Waitrose with a pained expression and asked, "But what are the legal ramifications of all of this? Aren't we breaking several laws by stealing corporate secrets?" Waitrose was growing a bit impatient now. "Doc, do you remember exactly where you were when the first plane hit the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001? Yeah, I was just going into the library at my college when I heard over someone's radio that a plane had hit the World Trade Center. And what did you think at that time?" "Well, I thought it must be a small private plane that had gone it horribly wrong and had accidentally hit the buildings. I then went to watch one of the TVs in the library and watched in horror as the second plane hit the Trade Center." Waitrose had him right where he wanted him now. "So having witnessed those attacks, do you think that the U.S. should be entitled to take active steps in its defense of itself?" The doctor had been beaten by this line of reasoning. "Well, yes, but I'm still a bit surprised that we engage in corporate espionage." Waitrose had looked at him and simply said, "Doctor, we engage in our activities for the sake and safety of our country. You can take your skill set and go and make money, or you can join our cause to make the country a safer place to live. We believe you're the right man for the job. You have a burning desire to move forward robotics with artificial intelligence. We share your ambition. It's for those reasons that we're talking to you. We'd like you to start just as soon as your finals here are complete." Roberts nodded. He could see the point that Waitrose was making. He wanted more than anything to combine his 2 fields of expertise and move robotics forward with artificial intelligence. This would be his opportunity.